Hey, hey man, let me quickly go over the code. It's working. I just wanna. There's some things I wish I'd done a little differently because I'm sending it to you rather than I'm just doing it for myself. If I was doing it just for myself, I don't like this is fine. There's no. It works. It's just I've used two different ways of doing something because I'm more comfortable with one, but yours needed a slightly different approach. I'll show you what those are. I can make an improvement later, but you'll get the idea. I think regardless, it's not too big of a deal. So it's you can make it out. It's running in the background. What I'm going to do, I'm going to open a separate window just so that you have a reference point for how we're doing this. No, let's do it in a normal one. Yeah. So let me go over how it is that how you should plan to do something like that, right? I'll go over the code, of course, as well, but just a reference point. Wait, am I recording? Okay, all right, just in case. Okay, so I'll go to Google.com, and since you mentioned it was tailors in Riyadh, I do tailors. Yeah, oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay, cool. So it'll pick out a bunch. Actually, yeah, I think before I might have done near, so that I was looking for streets. I was just trying to see if I could target down to one location, but then I thought, well, why not cover the whole thing? So it brings up this list, and you have, 20 per page, the usual kind of thing. So this is a scrollable panel. This is not scrollable, at least not in the sense of a page scroll. It's got a different purpose. And actually, we don't really care about the entire, what do you call it, right side of the screen, the map per se. So you've got this, and the things that are important in it are, this is a list of results. Sorry, the reason I'm explaining it this way, obviously you know it's a list of results. The reason I'm explaining it is so that you know how to pick out parts of the screen, which is what the scraper is, that's what the job is, right? So you've got this thing that scrolls and it has 20 results in it. And when it loads, you can see it doesn't load all 20. I mean, the 20 are available, but they're not all visible, obviously, because you have a limited number depending on screen resolution and how much you've maximized the window and so on. Once you've gone through all 20, we're going to click on this button and go to the next page. But by gone through all 20, I mean you click on a result and you see this panel here. This panel has all the information that you want, which looks like one address. I'm not entirely sure what this is. Is it just an Arabic version of the same address? I assume that's really the only difference. So I've just treated that as address 1, address 2. This, it's actually, it seems useless for your case. I don't know. In the code, I look for either the word open or closed as the starting word. If I see that, I assume it's this line and I just drop it because I don't care. In this case, for the phone numbers, I look for anything with 966 or plus 966 as the starting uh, part of the string. If I see that, I treat it as a phone number. Uh, if I see there's I'll show you how I look for it. There's also ways to check if something is if it looks like a URL. If it does, I'll save that as the URL. If it's not a URL, it's not a phone number, it's not this, and it is still a string, and it's a string that contains a plus, but also some letters. Phone numbers would never contain a letter, and this thing, it might contain a number, but it will always contain a plus and a letter. If it sees that, it saves it under location. All right. So once you've done this, it looks for up here, you see that back to results. It looks for that, and then it clicks on it, and it comes back here. And it works its way through the entire list. When it reaches, say, Mashar, the next one is Classic Tailors. But by default, Classic Tailors is underneath its visible area. So it has to internally do a scroll so that it can pull that value up. So you have to bear that in mind. Because that Classic Tailors is actually available. Available meaning it's available in the HTML. But technically you can't click on something that's not visible, and it knows that. So if you try to do that, it'll screw it up in all kinds of weird ways. So you have to do some weird operations. I'll show you that in the code. It's just to give you an idea. So anyway, you go through the whole list, you do your 20 classic blah blah all the way down, and once you've reached the end, you click next, wait for a little bit, and that's the thing. You got to wait for maybe a second or two. In this case, it was actually probably less than 2 seconds. I usually give it about 4, so that, okay, whatever your connection, in 4 seconds, it's usually loaded. And then it goes through, again, the same deal on these 20, and it keeps on going until you reach the end. And at the end, this is actually no longer a button. When that happens, you can pretty much call it quits on this operation because it's done what it can do. Okay, so let's head back to screen number 1. Let's take a look at what, so I'm sure you're familiar with this. You can either right-click and choose Inspect. This is in Chrome. It's a little different in Firefox, which is what I use, and I'll tell you why I use Firefox. You could technically use Chrome. I'd have to make a small change, like a one-line change, and give you a new file to use. It's not Chrome, it's Chromium, and Firefox is a different web driver. It's just weird rules for which browser you choose to do it with. The reason I use Firefox is Chrome is tuned to my usage, and I do not want Google associating my usage with automated behavior, which I'm sure they can figure out anyway. I don't think I'm fooling anyone, but at least as a general thing, I don't want to make it obvious that I automate behavior on my own machines. If I do, I want to do it outside of my network so that it doesn't look like it's me doing it, because I do it a fair bit and I don't want the association to come to my Google account. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, it's safe, by the way, in case you're worrying. It's not a big deal. If you do it continuously, I'm sure they can monitor and say, like, hey, this guy is running bots to do jobs. And I don't know why. In general, I just don't want them knowing I do that. So, okay, I'm going to right-click on that, choose Inspect. And let's take a look at it. It looks beefy. If you haven't done it before, it looks like, oh, that's a whole bunch of information. How am I going to pick it out? Don't worry about a lot of that shit. Just we'll work through it in order, and you'll see. So let's head up a little. Okay, you see as I move over the various blocks, it'll highlight what it's seeing, right? So it looks like as I go up, that's a block with all the rating and hours and whatever, I don't really care. And as I come down, right there, that's treated as one big block. So that must be the block which then contains all the sub-results inside it, right? So you can see that is, what's it called? It looks like, so I forget how much HTML stuff you've played with, but let's take a look at it. This part here is a div, and the divs are what make up most of your web pages. They're different sort of divisions of the screen into its subparts. So that is a div which has a class name, which is class equals, and it's this big mess of stuff, right? That big mess of stuff, it's actually multiple references. So it's section layout, section scroll box, scrollable Y, and various others. Each of those is, they call them CSS markers, obviously for applying CSS to them for styling and things. But you can use them to find which part of the screen you want to do something with. So I know all of my results are in this, and if I hop down, this also seems to cover, what do you call it? The same thing, the same set of results, but now without that showing results block. So that's even better, because this is the only part I care about. So you can see again, that has a section layout and all those other details in there. Now, as I go into that, you can see this is like, this one is this piece is tabbed in from this piece. And the result is tabbed in from this piece. Tabbed in meaning, like, literally it's just pushed in. It's a subfield of this. So you can see this guy has a data section ID, and it's this weird blob followed by the number 1. And you can probably guess the next one is the same thing. Where's the data section ID? Blah, 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 2, and then 3, and 4, and so on and so on, right? If I look at this guy, I see it has a thing called the ARIA label. And the ARIA label in this case is the name of the tailor. I'm not particularly concerned about what, was it called ARIA label, was it called name? I don't really care. If I go to a new web page, I'll just look and find which piece has the information I'm looking for. If I didn't know, let's close that for a second and look at how I would do it if I didn't know. So I'll right-click on the name, exactly on the name, and then just choose Inspect. And you can see that's a very specific part of it. So let's move back all the way until I get to the top. So you can always zoom in. This is exactly the same thing we saw, but now it's gone down to which bit is writing exactly that text, a Boss Taylor, whatever. So that's right there, and I can pull it out anytime I want. Okay. So we'll hop over to the code. The reason I show you that is so you know how I pick out different parts to work with. So let's hop over to the code, and we'll look at this guy here. So I'll show you how to set up your environment. You obviously don't need all this. This is just copied from code that I normally use for scraping. I've made it a little bit, try to write it out so it's a little bit more clear for you to follow, and I put comments in there as well. Up at the top, ignore those. Those are just extra libraries to help do some things easier. I don't think I'm using 90% of them. I should probably delete them. Maybe I'll delete those unnecessary ones before I send it to you. It's just I was lazy. Each of these, so I've written comments, but I'll just go over it quick. These are the number of seconds it will wait before doing an action. There's two reasons to wait. One, because when you click on a link or whatever, it takes a few seconds for that link to load up. So you need to give it that kind of time. The browser doesn't, well, that's not entirely true. The browser can tell you when it's ready, but that's not the best, it's not the only way to do it. You should wait for the browser to be ready and then just give it a second to let everything settle. So in some cases, the startup delay is the first one. That's, from the time you say, hey, run this script, it will take some number of seconds for the browser to pop up. If you've not been using that browser before, I don't use Firefox normally other than when I'm doing this kind of site ripping. So it takes a few seconds to start up. So I just say 5 seconds. For sure it's done in 3, but a couple seconds more doesn't hurt. It only happens the first time when it's opening up the browser. You remember that, let's look on the side here, the next button. Oh, it's reached the end actually. Oh, let's see if it actually works or it'll crash. I've not actually tried that. We'll see. But in any case, that next button, when I click it, it takes maybe a second or two for the page to load. I give it 5 seconds again. You can adjust that down if you want. I generally tend to keep them this way, but it's up to you. And each one of these, you'll see them as we go through the code, but they're basically the number of seconds it waits before it does some action. Here I've just put the name of the CSV file and the header row, the first row that will contain the details that you need. The map query, this is what you were asking, like how would I change it? If I wanted to find, I don't know, pizza places in New Jersey instead of Taylor's in Riyadh, I could just change this to pizza plus place plus new plus near plus new plus Jersey, and then that would become available. So you could just change the URL to whatever it is that you're trying to search for, and it'll do that. Then there's a couple of functions. One which is a short function, this guy here, which all it does is, when we click on a Taylor, here you see the panel, the data that comes up. It takes all that messy text and it splits it out into address, website, phone number, location, and if there was something I didn't recognize, it'll put it into a thing called auxiliary, unknown. Like maybe it's useful, but I don't really know what it is. I'll leave it, and the user can figure out if it's something they want to do something about. So that's this function. It's just to clean up the data. And this is the guy that actually does the extraction for you. I've tried to put in comments everywhere. We'll skip past that function for a minute. I'll show you how you start it up. This is the entire startup, right? So it's driver, and driver, I don't know why they use that. That's just the terminology. Driver basically means browser. In this case, it's the web driver to the browser. I use the name because that's everywhere you look on the internet, that's how people use it. So I just use the same terminology. So yeah, you start with WebDriver, wait for 5 seconds, so that like I said, that's the initial one. Oh, I should probably put that up. That's startup delay. Okay, I'll change that. But basically, yeah, I don't want to change it while it's running. Anyway, in any case, let's basically wait for 5 seconds and then call that big function, the Google Maps extractor. Call it and give it this driver. Pass that in there, and the map query that you saw up there, which says Taylor's near Riyadh, and it'll be passed in. We'll go up, and this is where it'll start. So it'll get that driver, the browser, and it'll get the search URL that you saw also. So the first thing it'll do is, hey, go and get that link. It'll get that. You don't have to worry about this, that it handles it. It'll go get the link. You start out by saying, look, there's going to be more pages, so hang tight. What is it? hang on, I think it missed something out. Just 1 second, I'm going to check something while we work. But in any case, that's it. If it is, it's a dumb error. I'll fix it separately. I think it's repeating the last page. It doesn't know that it's time to stop. Let's go down. Yeah, you can see this. The last few, it's repeating them. I'll take care of that. I'll take care of that in a minute. Maybe I'll send it to you first, then I'll take care of it because I'm lazy right now. I'll just kill the script. But yeah, I think it's got everything in there right now. Yep, it's gone through 230 plus results, which is how many there are. 227, I think, or thereabouts. So in any case, in that case, I can also make a change. Ignore me for just 2 seconds while I do this, just so that I make the code a little bit neater. Yeah, this is just so that if you change it at the top, you don't have to go looking through my code for everything if you don't want to. Okay, so we'll begin at the beginning again. So like I said, you tell the browser, go and get me this URL. And this URL, in this case, is that URL that you saw up here, the map query. Oops, sorry. It's this map query, right? So it's going to go fetch this page, which is basically the page that you see open in the browser there. I'll pull that, and it will say, hey, look, there's going to be more pages. You don't know if that's true yet. That's something that comes up, as you get there. And you can change that. So while more pages, so basically while this is true, which means go ahead and do it anyway, wait for how much ever time it takes to get to the next page. Go grab all the HTML from that page. Wait until everything has been loaded on that page, and it will. That's internally, when you see usually the little spinning circle when something is loading on a page, it's just on top of the browser or wherever. So like that little spinny bit. It waits until that's done. Once it's done, this is the part that I wish I had done differently, only for your case, not because it matters. Beautiful Soup is this library used to very quickly find stuff inside a web page. I use that a little bit, and then I use the old school method a little bit, because you have to use the old school method. There's no choice in this one. I wish I'd just done everything the old school way, then I wouldn't have to bug you. But in one way, it's good. You'll see why Beautiful Soup is useful also. So the first thing you do is sleep for whatever number of seconds we've allowed. So I've said wait after elements loaded, which is wait after elements loaded here, 2 seconds. So just wait 2 more seconds, and then we use Beautiful Soup, which I've marked as BS there. Go and find all of those divs in which there is a section result. So if you remember, what we said is, if I right-click here in the blank area of any one of these results, what was it? A div whose class is section result. So let's take a look at this div. Where's this class? There we go. I'm sorry, I'm blind. Yeah, there. You see that? Class is section result. So each one of these guys, each one of these results has a section result as its class. So what this will do is, or what it's saying rather is, find all cases where you have something with the name section result in its class field, and stick that into an array called result list. That's one part of it. This piece was done for a different reason. This is result scroll panel, which says, it uses a slightly different format, but the way to read it is, look for any div whose class, and this thing means starts with, not just equals, but specifically starts with. It should start with section layout, section scroll box. So that was basically, if you remember, go up, section layout, section scroll box. So it basically will go pick this block out, and it'll pull that in. The reason I do this is, I told you, right, you're going to have to know where this scroll box is so that you can scroll, so that it can move down to the next result so that you can click on it. That's the reason I'm doing it that way. So you've got two things. One, which is the result list, which you'll do your work on, and the scroll panel, which you'll just scroll so that you can, scroll. Yeah. So this thing will then, just for my reference, it checks and says, hey, how many results are on this page? Just so that I know, look, it's working. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm waiting blind, and something screws up. I don't really know. It's only for my sort of debugging, if you like. So now what we say is this results list, which we know has 20 results per page or less. It could be less if there's less items in that thing. But for each one of the items in these result lists, so result val is each time it'll go through 1, 2, 3, 4, like the first one, second one, third one, all the way down. It will print out result val index and the ARIA label, which, if you remember, the ARIA label was just the name of the guy. Oops. Yeah, let's take a look. We'll pick one at random. Oop, let's pick it from down here. Back. So the ARIA label was the name here, and the data result index is which position is it in 1 to 20, right? Even when you go to the next page, which is 21 to 40, it'll still count them as 1 to 20 because it's 1 to 20 on that page specifically. So what it does is it will print out, where is it? Sorry, it'll print out the index and then in brackets the name of the tailor. So if you take a look, that's basically on the side here. You can see, for example, 10 bracket whatever the name of the tailor was, close bracket, which is basically what I've told it to do here. Print the name of the index of the guy, bracket, name, close bracket. And that's all it is. I also save this name for later just because it's convenient. I need it. I need it for other purposes, so I just save it in a variable called name. Okay, now once you've done that, what we're looking for is the data. Okay, well, let's look at it in for real here. Okay, data section ID. What I want to do is click on this, in order from the first one, the next one. For each one of those results, I want to click inside and go to where the data is. So I want to go to the detailed data for that guy. So let's, well, I don't want to click on it right now. If I click on it right now, it'll take me there and it'll change this HTML. So let's take a look first. So each one of those results has a data section ID, which if you remember, was this thing here. You see data section ID, and it's some name, and it'll be blah 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 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 20. So I say find me any block which has data section ID and then whatever the results value was. So if it's 1, it's 1, 2, it's 2, and then it'll just go through each one. It will find that and it'll save it in this result. Now, you got to realize as you go through the result val, this number will change each time. And this will change from, ZXF whatever order number 1 to order 2, order 3, all the way down to 20. And that's what you're trying to do, is go through the list and say, hey, find me the one with this data, find me the one with this data. And for each one that you find, you say, scroll into view. Now in this case, this guy's already in view, so it's not going to do anything. This guy is already in view, it's not going to do anything. All the way up to here, no problem, it's in view, not going to do anything. This guy was not in view, so when it crosses this guy and comes here, it will internally do the scroll operation to make it appear as if it was in view, and then proceed from there. Oops. Okay, so that's this piece, scroll into view. This is junk. I'll get rid of this. You don't need to see that part. Second is click on that. So once you've done this part, once you've identified this, scroll it into view if it needs to be, and then click on it, which you can see is an action chain operator. That's also built into this WebDriver thing. And you say, click on this result div. Perform is, carry out this operation basically. So it'll click on it. It'll wait for load specific result delay, which is, how much did we say? 4 seconds. You don't even need that. It's probably about 2 seconds. I just do it to, like I said. So so it'll wait for 4 seconds, and then once it lands in there, it will look first for a button with the name section back to list button. So click here, which is, it's basically this. It's looking for this thing first. You could look for it later. I just happen to look for it now. And the way I found that was just again, I right click on it, inspect, and I move here and I see button, and that has a class which says section back to list button. So I'm looking for something with section back to list button, blue link, no print, which is exactly what this thing is called, right? And it's unlikely that Google is going to change that name immediately. If they change that name, you'll have to go in there and change it, but it's probably not going to change in any immediate hurry. So now you've got the back button ready. I will grab all the data from this page, and I will start looking for something with section layout. Section layout is, it happens to be, let's take a look. And I find this by trial and error, by the way. It's not like, nobody knows all this going in. You just look for stuff that could work. So this is obviously the bit that has all the crap that you need, which is section layout, right? So, and you can see that class is section layout, which is exactly what we're doing. Find a division whose class is equal to section layout, and it pulls all this out. It actually takes all of the text from it, because for some reason, Google they didn't really divide this and call this address, time, phone, location. They didn't separate it out. So I do the separation myself in that other function, which was this clean tailor info panel just above this function. I can go over that in detail if you want. It's a little mundane. I'm just looking for things that start with 966. If you're fine with Python, you already know all this. It's not a big deal. But basically, it'll get everything and send it back to me as a cleaned up JSON block, which is ready to use data in. In here, I don't save it because I only used this panel here. I don't have the name. The name is sticking outside here. But if you remember, I saved the name above. So I take that name and I jam it into the results I got out of this. Very quickly, I'll just mention what this function has. This function takes the big ugly blob of text that I get. It strips out the phone number, the location, the address types. It prints them out, which is what you're seeing here, so that I know, hey, look, it's actually getting it. Don't worry about this location. Like an idiot, I've written the wrong thing here, but the location is correctly saved. It's not a problem. Don't worry about that. You can see it. This is exactly why that mistake shows up. In location, I'm printing out phone instead of the actual location which I've saved. It's saved correctly in the file. It's dumb. Anyway, what it returns then is something that looks like address 1 equals whatever the first line of the address is. Address 2 is whatever the second line of the address is, if there is a second line. I assume if you're looking in English-speaking countries, you might only get the one line of address, maybe. So if there's nothing there, it just puts a blank, like double quotes, nothing in there. Phone number puts a phone number, location, website. And if there was something that looked like it's useful, but it doesn't know what it is, it just calls it auxiliary and sticks it in there, and it sends it back to you. You see that the name is missing. So when it returns here, I just take the name that we saved before, and to this clean data, I just stick in the name and I add that in there. And that's it, basically, man. It just takes it and it saves it individually to the CSV file. It's a little stupid. If you were, following good practices, you do 20 or 30 and then write them to the file, because it's slow if you open a file, write a thing, close the file, then go back and do the next. But since we're waiting 2-3 seconds anyway to do everything else, it makes literally no difference. Also, there's a side benefit. If anything crashes in between, whatever you got, whatever results you got, they're always safely written to the file. You don't miss out on anything. Yeah, that's it. So it saves that to the file, and then you remember the back button, which was this guy, which we already saved. It goes and it clicks on the back button, and then it just waits for a few seconds, and proceeds with the next one, and the next one, and the next one, all the way down. Then when it finishes that loop of 20, it goes and it grabs the next button. Once it does the next button, if there's no more next button, which will happen at the end, though I think I made a mistake, otherwise it wouldn't, that thing where I stopped for a second and I saw the values were repeating. For some reason it missed the next button. I'll fix that in yours, but basically it should get to the stage where there's no longer a next button. See, I'm a retard. I was looking for back button. There's the problem. Yeah, if there's no more next button, there's no more pages, break this operation and go out. And that's it. So if there is a next button though, it will go, click on the next button, click next button, and it'll just show you next click, and it'll keep going from there. that's basically it. There's a lot of talking, so I'll shut up. Yeah, let me know if that works out for you. I'll get it ready. I'll send you instructions on how to set up your environment correctly to do this, because you need to do a few things for it to be able to take control of your browser, because it's it's obviously a hard permission to to give to make sure your browser can just be given to the control of the machine. So, okay, sounds good.